Hello, everyone. In this session, we are going to be examining work folders. In the previous session, we talked about offline files, and the scenario there was that we had our file server and we had a shared folder. Now, when the user is at work, the user accesses that shared folder from the server. But when the user goes home or the user is traveling, that data will be accessed because the data has been cached locally on the user's computer. That is, if offline files is turned on. So then what's the difference between the work folder and the offline files function? Well, now with work folders, the user is able to sync or update his information with the server even though the user's device is not connected to the file server where the data is stored. For example, with offline files, Ben would have had to return to the office and have his laptop connected to the file server in order to have his data synchronized with the sales data folder or file on the file server. However, with work folders, Ben does not have to go back to the office to keep his data updated or to have his data synchronized. If Ben happens to be in Japan, Ben can synchronize or update his data because that data is now going to be published to the internet. So wherever Ben goes, he will have access to the shared data, and not only that, any changes or additions that are made to that data will now be synchronized with the server data right away. So there is no chance of him having stale data. Let us look at some facts about work folders. Our first fact here is that work folders is a kind of new technology and is implemented in Windows Server 2012 R2. Again, Ben can access the data from any location once his internet connection is working. Another very important point about work folders would be that the administrator is able to manage and control that stored data. He can also manage the user's connection to the work folder. For example, the administrator, which would be you, is able to enforce the encryption of those work folders. The administrator can control which users are able to use the work folder functionality. Even if your device is not joined to the domain, so you could be working from your phone, you can be working from your tablet, you can be working from a system that was not joined to the domain. So work folders can use either domain joined or non-domain joined devices. As we said before, the work folders can be published to the internet through web application proxy functionality, which is also new to Server 2012 R2, and that is why the users are able to synchronize their data whenever they have an internet connection because of the fact that the data is published to the internet. Before we take a look at setting up and configuring work folders, let us look at some of the requirements. You need to be working with a 2012 R2 file server. To set up work folders for a client, you will need to use group policy. And you need to have a domain controller running Server 2012, which is recommended but not required. Because remember, with work folders, the systems don't necessarily have to be joined to the domain. You can be using a device that's not joined to the domain. There are certain requirements, software requirements for the client computers that will be using this work folder functionality. The computer systems have to be running either Windows 10, Windows 8.1, Windows 7. If you're Android, it has to be 4.4 KitKat and later. If you're running iOS, you have to be running iOS 8 and later. This functionality can also be performed on Windows 7 PCs, but you have to be running either Windows 7 Professional, 7 Ultimate, or 7 Enterprise. And also, the Windows 7 PCs must be joined to your organizational domain. So if you have a 7 PC, that PC has to be joined to the domain. They cannot be in a work group, meaning that you have to join them to the domain. If you are using the aspect of internet synchronization, because remember, work folders can do both. They can do what offline files did, meaning that the data can be cached locally on your device, and then when you come back to work and you join the domain, then the data is going to be synchronized. But in addition to that, work folder, then they have the option of having you synchronize your data with the published data on the internet. If you're going to go that route, then work folders require that you configure certificates. So when a client then tries to get information from the server then has to send a certificate to the client. And the client's computer will evaluate the certificate, and it will only continue with the negotiation if that certificate is valid and can be trusted. In other words, guys, when you access your data, the data that's on the server at work, which is published to the internet, you want to be sure that that data is encrypted. And the way that that data is encrypted is with certificates. So you can obtain a certificate from a trusted CA in your environment, meaning that if you have certificate services installed in your environment, then your organization can issue certificates, or you can purchase a certificate from a commercial CA online. We now want to actually go and look to see how these work folders are set up. We want to begin our configuration of the work folders functionality by actually installing work folders. So from Server Manager, we're going to click on Manage, Add Roles and Features. You're going to click Next on the Before You Begin screen. Click Next on the Select Installation Type screen. Click Next on the Select Destination Server screen. And now on the Select Role Services screen, we want to expand File and Storage Services. Then we want to also expand File and iSCSI services. And then we want to click on the checkbox to the left of work folders. So we're going to click Add Features here, because we need the IIS Hostable Web Core feature in order for work folders to function. So we're going to click Add Features here. You're going to continue by clicking Next. Click Next a second time. And we are ready to install. So we're going to click on Install. Once that installation is succeeded, we're going to click Close. The next thing we want to do is to create a security group for the work folders. So we are going into Active Directory Administrative Center, and we are going to create a group. And this group is going to be used for adding users who would want to access the work folders functionality. So we're going to click on Tools, Active Directory Administrative Center. We want to click on the tree view here. There are two views left, one to the left and one to the right. We're going to click on the one to the right, which is the tree view. And then we want to expand Contoso. So we're going to click here to expand Contoso. Then we're going to Users here, and we're going to right click here, and then to the right of New, we're going to come down to Group, and we're going to click on Group because we want to create a group. For the name of the group, we're going to type HR Sync Share Users Group. So HR Sync, S-Y-N-C, Share Users Group. And then we must press Enter. Under the Members tab, we want to click on Add because we want to add some members to the group. So we're going to click on Add. And to find those users, we're going to click on Advanced, Find Now. And we want Adam Apple, so we're going to click here on Adam. Then click on OK. OK a second time. We want to add someone else to the group, Asha Agard. So we're going to click on Add here on the members. Advanced, Find Now. We're going to search for Asha. Here is Asha. So we're going to click on Asha. And then we're going to click on OK. Click on OK a second time. And we're going to click on OK a third time. So what we did there was we created a group and we put some users in the group because we want those users to be able to use the work folder functionality. The next thing that we're going to do is to create a sync share for the user data. So while on the Server Manager screen, we're going to expand File and Storage Services. And you click on Work Folders. And then we want to go over to the right. And we're going to click on this down arrow to the right of Task. And we're going to select New Sync Share. At the Before You Begin screen, we want to click on Next. On the Select the Server Path screen, we now want to click on Browse, and we want to search for that share. So we're going to click on Browse. We're going to double click on the C drive. And we're going to look for the shares folder. Here it is. And we're going to double click on the shares folder. The share that we want is the share here, HR Sync Share. So we're going to click on the HR Sync Share and say select folder. You can see here the path to the sync share. C, shares, HR sync shares. And we want to click on next to continue. At this point, we have some options here. User alias at domain. We're going to accept the default and click on next. And here we have the name of the sync share. So we're going to accept that. It's HR sync share. So we simply will click on next. On the grant sync access to groups, we now have to go look for that group. So we're going to click on add. And we just want to type the name of that group. Remember, the group started with HR. So we're just going to type HR and check for that name. So we'll bring up any name ending with HR. So we're going to type HR and then press enter. And then we're going to click on check names here. Right. So we see that that brought up the HR Sync Share group that we would have created. So we go ahead now and click on OK. Once we see that that name is right, you could go ahead and click on OK. Then we're going to click on next to continue. And if you see here, we already have by default automatically lock screen and require password. We can uncheck that if we want to. We're going to enforce the encryption of work folders here. So this is where you come in as the administrator. You can actually control the user's data. So you're saying that the data in the work folders should be encrypted. So we're going to click here on encrypt work folders. Then click next. On the confirm selection screen, we want to click on create. So you want to read everything that you've done first, and then you want to click on create. Once we've done that, we can close the sync share box. And we have actually then given those users access to the share. Now, if you have a large number of domain join PCs to which you want to deploy work folders, you can use group policy to do the client configuration. What you would have to do within group policy is to specify which sync server users should use, and also you can force work folders to be set up automatically using the default settings. So we're going to do that now. We're actually going to go into group policy. So we want to click on tools, group policy management. And we want to set up a policy. So we're going to right click on Contoso and select create a GPO in this domain and link it here. For the name of the GPO, we're going to call that work folders. And we want to press enter after typing work folders. You click OK on the new GPO box. Then we want to expand Contoso to see that GPO. So we expand Contoso. And you can see the work folders GPO there. And we want to right click on that GPO. And we want to click on Edit. So we're going to actually look for the specific policy that we want. And we begin this by clicking on User Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, and then we want to click on Work Folders. Now here we have that policy, specify work folder settings. So we're going to double click and open that. And what we have to do here is to click on Enable to enable the policy. And let's look at what the policy says. It says this policy setting specifies the work folder server for affected users, as well as whether or not users are allowed to change settings when setting up work folders on a domain-joined computer. If you enable this policy setting, affected user receive work folder settings when they sign into a domain-joined PC. So the affected users would be the users that you would have set up in the group. And the group will go in an OU and you'll be actually setting this policy on that OU. Then you have the work folders URL, which you will put here in this box on the left. And in that box, you can specify either the URL used by the organization for work folders discovery or the specific URL of the file server that stores the affected user data. So don't forget, right here, you will put the address for that work folder. And remember, we are publishing that data to the internet. So you will have a URL. Once the user goes on, the user that's authorized to use the work folder, by default, that user will be able to find or discover that URL. And then the next thing that we have here is to force the automatic setup. And that option specifies that work folder should be automatically set up without prompting the user. So the user doesn't have to do anything. Once that user has been given permission to use work folders and the user goes online, user will then be able to access his data from the internet. And the reason for this forced automatic setup is it prevents the user from choosing not to use work folders on the computer. So that's a good point for you to note as administrators. So we're actually going to click on Forced Automatic Setup, and we're going to click on OK. We want to close the Group Policy Editors box. And we want to remind you of the differences between the work folder and the offline. Remember, offline, yes, the data is going to be cached on the local drive of the computer. But if you go home or you travel or you take your laptop anywhere else, the data will remain as it was when you last sat in front of your desk in the office. There's going to be no changes because you cannot update or synchronize that data until you get back to work and you are connected to the server. So you might have stale data because it's the weekend. Someone might have made changes to that stale data. Remember, the folder, the share sits on your server. So it's only when you go back to work now and your folder is then automatically synchronized with the folder on the server that that data will be updated. However, if you are using work folders, that data is pushed to the internet, is published on the internet. So wherever you are, as soon as that data gets changed, your system will synchronize with the published information, and your information will always be up to date. In addition to that, the administrator is able to manage that stored data, is able to say that the data is encrypted, is able to decide who will or who will not have access to the work folders. And another point, not forgetting, you can use work folders with computers that are not joined to the domain as long as you have internet access, which means that you can access it from your phone, from your tablet, from your PC. That is the end of this session. I want to thank you for listening.